How the economy machine works in 30 minutes. The economy works like a simple machine, but many people don't understand it, or they don't agree how it actually works. This is a lot of needless economic support. I feel a deep sense of responsibility to share my simple but practical economic template. Though it's unconventional, it helped me to anticipate and sidestep the global financial crisis, and this worked for me 30 years. Let's begin. Though the economy might seem complex, it works simple mechanical way. It's made up of few simple parts and a lot of simple transactions that are repeated over and over a zillion times. These transactions are available and driven by human nature, and it created three main drive the economy. Number one, productivity growth. Number two, the short-term debt cycle. And number three, the long-term debt cycle. Well, look at this process and how random on top of each other create a good template for tracking economic movements and figuring out what's happening now. Let's start the simplest part of the economy, transaction. An economy is simple sum of transactions making up, and a transaction to a simple thing. You make transactions all the time. Every time you buy something, you create a transaction. Each transaction consists of buyer exchanging money or credit with the seller for goods, services, financial asset. Credit spending just like money. So adding together the money spent amount credit spending, you could know total spending. The total amount spent drives the economy. If you divide the amount spent by the quantity sold, you get a price. And that's it. That's a transaction. It's the building of block the economy machine. All cycles, all forces, and economy driven by transaction. So if you cannot understand transactions, you can understand whole economy. A market consists of the buyer or the seller making transactions for the same thing. For example, there is a wheat market or car market or stock market and market of millions of things. An economy consists of all the transactions, all the transaction market. If you add up total spending and the total quantity sold, you all of market. Will everything on to understand economy. It just helps simple. People, businesses, banks, government all engage transactions with just credit, exchanging money and credit for goods, services, and financial assets. The biggest buyers are the government, which consists of two important parts. A central government of collects taxes and spends money, and a central bank, which is just different from the buyers sellers because they control and the amount of money of credit economy. It does this by influencing by interest for printing new money. For these reasons, it said the central bank is important for the flow credit. I want you to pay attention credit. Credit is the most important part of the economy and probably understood. It's the most first important because it is the most valuable part. Just like buyers, sellers go to the market to make a transaction. So the lenders borrow. Lenders usually make money into more money, and borrowers usually buy something mechanic buy for the car when I want to invest in starting business. Credit can help the lenders borrow get what they want. Borrowers promise to repay the amount borrowed, core principle, for definition or now, core interest. When interest rates are high, there's always a borrow because it's expensive. When interest is low, borrowing increases because it's cheaper. When borrowers promise to repay and lenders believe them, credit is credit. Any two people can agree create credit and out of thin air. That seems simple enough. The credit is tricky because it's a different name. As soon as credit created, it immediately turns debt. Debt is both asset to the lender and a liability to the borrower. In the future, when the borrower repays the loan plus interest, the asset loss the liability disappear, and the transactions are settled. So why is credit important? Because when borrower receives credit, we could be able to increase its spending. And remember, spending drives the economy. This is because one person's spending is not a person's income. Think about it. Every dollar spending someone else's hours, and every dollar you earn someone else spending. Someone else spend more, someone else earns more. When someone's income rises, it makes renters willing to lending money because now he is more reward credit. A credit-worthy borrower has two things: the ability to repay and collateral. Having a lot of income relation to this that gives him ability to repay. And eventually can to repay, he has valuable asset to use as collateral can be sold. This makes lenders so comfortable lending him money. So increases income allows increases borrowing, which allows increases spending. And since more person's spending in another person's income, this leads to more increases borrow and so on. This helping process power is the economic growth, and is why you have a cycle. In as transactions, you have to give something in order to get something. And how much you get depends how much introduced. Over time in loan and a lot of accumulated knowledge, we call this productivity growth. Those in your eventually and hardworking raises productivity and living standard faster, knows it complaces raise. But that isn't necessarily true of the short run. Productivity matters in long run, but credit matters most in short run. This is because productivity does fluctuate much, sort of knowledge-driven swings, that is. Because a lot also consume more than they introduce inquiry, and reports that consume less than reduce when you have to pay it back. That swings occur in two big cycles. One takes about 5 days years, and the other takes about 75 to 100 years. Well, most people typically don't see the cycles because they see them too up close, day by day, week by week. In this chapter, going to step back to get this reports and have the interactive makeup our experience. As mentioned, the swings around not to depth how much innovation, hard work there. The primary how much credit is. Let's for second amazing economy of the credit. In this second economy only increases my spending. This increases my income. Which quality is made more productivity on the more work. Increases productivity is the only way grow. Since my spending is another person's income, the economy grows every time while learning will be more productive. If we follow the transactions for the ratio progress, what the productivity grows forward. But because we borrow, we have cycles. This is due that anymore as a regulation. It's due to human nature and way the credit works. Think about its simplest way pulling spending forward. In order to buy something you can't afford, you need to spend more you need to make. To do this, the central event borrow from your future self. In doing so, you create the time in the future that you need to spend less than you make in order to pay you back. It very quickly exemplifies cycles. Basically, anytime you borrow, you create the cycle. This is true for individual agency economy. This is why understanding credit is all one project because it sets in motion mechanical, predictable series of events going to happen in the future. This makes credit different money. Money is what you set up transaction with. When you buy your beer for bartender with cash, the transaction settle immediately. But when you buy your beer with credit, it's starting a bartender. You saying the credit promise to pay the future. Together, bartender credit asset and a liability. You just created credit out of thin air. It's not a thing to pay the bartender rather that the asset your liability disappear the particular goes away and the transactions settle. The reality both receive public money is actually credit. The total amount credited in the United States is $50 trillion, and the total amount of money is only about $3 trillion. We remember in an economy that are credit, the only way increases spending to produce more. But in the economy with credit, it also increases spending by borrowing. As a result, economy with credit has more spending and allows income to rise past the productivity in the short run, but not of the long run. But don't get me wrong. Credit is necessary something bad just to cause cycles. It's bad when a financial overconsumption it can't pay back. However, it's good when the picture of the allocated resource introduces income so you can pay back to them. For example, if you borrow money, borrow big TV, what doesn't generate income completely pay back that. But if you borrow money to say buying tractor, and not the tractor rate to harvest more, creates more money, then you can pay back to can improve living standard. In an economy with credit, we can follow the transactions to see how credit grow. When you give me an example. Suppose you have $100 a year and have no debt. Your credit in borrow $10,000, say on a credit card. So you can spend $110,000 even though $100,000. Since your pen spending is another person's income, someone is also $110,000. The person's only $110,000 with no debt can borrow $11,000, so we can spend $121,000 even though only won $110,000. His spending is another person's income, and by following the transaction, we can begin to see how the process works in a self-processing pattern. But remember, borrowing creates cycles, and if the cycle goes up, it eventually comes down. This leads into the short-term debt cycle. As economic activity increases in expensive, for first short-term debt cycles, spending continuously increases, so prices rise. This happens because increases spending is fueled by credit, which can be created instead by in-out of thin air. When in amount spending income for faster the product short of good, prices rise. When prices rise, we call inflation. The central bank want too much inflation because it cross promise. Seeing prices rise, if price raises increases, the higher the interest rate, fewer people can afford to borrow money. Cost because rises. Think about this monthly payments in credit card going up. Because borrow less and higher daily payment, they arrest the money over the spending. So spending is low. And spend 1% spend is not a person's income. Income right. And so on and so forth. When people spend less, the prices go down because there is deflation. Economic activity decreases and we have a recession. If the recession becomes too severe and inflation no longer a problem, the central bank lower interest to cause everything to pick up again. With lower interest, debt repayments reduce and borrow spending pick up, and we see another expansion. As we can see, the economy works like a machine. In short-term debt cycle, spending is concentrated only by willing the lenders borrow provides receive credit. When credit is easily available, there is economy expensive. When credit isn't easily available, there's a recession. And note that this cycle controlled primarily by the central bank. The short-term debt cycle will typically last 5 to 8 years and happen over and over again for a decade. But notice at the bottom in the top of each cycle finish with more growth the previous cycle and with more debt. Why? Because people push it. Their inclination borrow, spend more, they're spending back debt. It's human nature. Because this, over long periods of time, that you write past income, created a long-term debt cycle. Despite people becoming more of them, lenders even more fully accept credit. Why? Because everyone thinks it's going great. People are just focused on happening lately. And what's the happening lately? Incomes haven't rise, asset value keep going up. The stock market roar. It's a boom investment by your goods, services, financial asset with borrow money. When people do a lot of them, we call it a bubble. So even though that same growing, incomes are growing nearly expense the offset. Let's call the ratio debt to income the debt burden. So long as income continues to rise, the debt burden stays manageable. At the same time, asset value soar. People borrow a huge amount of money to buy assets as investment, causing the prices to rise even higher. People feel wealthy. So even with accumulation or lots of debt, rising income asset value help for borrowers incredibly from long time. But this obviously cannot continue forever, and it doesn't. Over decades, its burden slowly increases, creating large debt repayments. At some point, the repayments drag long past incomes, forcing people to cut back on the spend. And since one person's spending is another person's income begin to go down, which makes the people less creditworthy, causing borrow to get down. Debt repayments continue to rise, it makes spending drop even further, and the cycle reverses itself. This is a long-term debt peak. Debt burdens have simply become big. For the United States, Europe, and much of the rest of the world, this happened 2008. It happened the same reason happened in Japan in 1989 and in the United States back in 1929. Now the economy begins deleveraging. In a deleveraging, people cut spending, incomes fall, credit disappear, asset prices drop, banks squeeze, the stock market crashes, social tensions rises, and whole things start spinning on the other way. As the incomes fall, the repayments rise, borrowers squeeze. No longer creditworthy, credit drives up, and borrowers can no longer give enough money to take repayment. Scrambling filled with hole, borrowers pursued sell asset. The rest of sellers produce market at the same time spending more for. This is a Western market collapses. The real estate market tanks, banks credit trouble. As asset drop, the value of collateral drop. This makes borrow even less creditworthy. People poor. Credit rapidly disappear. Less spending, less income, less wealth, less credit, less borrowing, and so on. It's vicious cycles. This appears similar to recession, but the difference here is the interest can be brought the same to debt. In a recession, lowering the interest rate works to stimulate borrow. However, in a deleveraging, lowering interest doesn't work because interest already in some years 0%. So this stimulus again. Interest United States so 0% during the deleveraging United States in the 30 and again to 2008. The difference between the recession and the deleveraging is then the deleveraging borrower debt burdens is simply got too big and can be low borrowing interest. Lenders about that become to rise in before the payback. Borrower lost the ability to repay in the collateral has of less value. They fear the capital by debt, even in the workload. Lenders stop the lending, borrowing, stop borrowing. Think of the economy as being not creditworthy, just like individual. So what do you do about the leveraging? The problem is debt burdens too high and it must come down. There are four ways this can happen. 1. People, businesses, governments cut their spending. 2. That's this problem structuring. 3. Raise reduced from the haves to the have-nots. And finally, 4. The central banks prints new money. These few ways that happened every deleveraging in modern history. Usually spending cut first. As with just for people businesses, even governments tight their business, cut their spending so that they can pay down on the debt. This is often in the obvious as theory. When borrowing start taking the new debts, start paying the over debt, you might expect that burden decreases. But the opposite is because spending is cut, and one man's spending is another man's income, it causes income to fall. They fall faster than your debts are repaid, and the debt burdens actually gets worse. As we see, this cutting to spending deflationary and painful. Businesses are forced to cut costs, which means rates drop and higher employment. This next step. That's reduce. Many borrow expenses and many are unable to loan. Borrows debt and lenders asset. When a borrower does repay the man's bank, people get nervous and the bank repay them. So they rush to call the money to the bank. Banks get squeezed and people, businesses and banks for the debt. This severe economic contracts is depression. A big part of the depression is people discovering much what they thought was their wealth isn't really there. Let's go back to the bar. When you borrow beer and put it in the bar tag, you promise to repay bar tag. Your promise became the asset bar tag. But if you break promise, if you want to pay back in concessions or put a bar tag, and the asset it has isn't any worth anything. It has a basically disappear. Many lenders don't work there is what disappear, inaugurate debt restructuring. Debt restructuring means lenders get paid back less, or get paid back longer time frame, or rolling interest most cannot agree. Somehow, the contract broke new way to introduce debt. Lenders broader have the little of something and all of nothing. Even though debt does disappear, debt restructuring causes income asset value to the disappear faster, so the debt burden continues to get worse. Why current spending debt deduction is also painful and inflationary. All of this impacts the central government because lowering incomes and less employment means the government collects fewer taxes. At the same time, needs to increase its spending because unemployment. Many are employed and even encourage living to finances of the government. Additionally, government created a stimulus plan and increases spending to make up for decreases economy. Government budget deficit is floated leverage because they spend more than earning taxes. This is what's happening on your budget deficit on the news. To fund their deficit, governments need to even raise taxes or borrow money. But really the incomes falling in so many employed, who is the money come from? The rich. Since government have more money, since the rest concentrated in the hands of a small percent of people. Governments naturally raise taxes on more wealthy, which facility reduced for which wealthy in economy. Perhaps to have not. Perhaps not for suffering begin to resent over health. The wealthy health being squeezed by the weakened economy, falling assets prices, and higher taxes begin to raise and high have not. If the depression continues, social disorder can break out. Not only the tension with income, they can rise between the especially that are incredible countries. This situation can lead to political change that can sometimes reach extreme. In the 1930s, this led to Hitler coming to power, wanted more into pressures on the United States. Pressure something to end the depression and increases. Remember, most black people for access money use actually credit. So when credit disappears, people don't have the money. People read this money, and you remembered who can print money. The central banks can. Having you ready to earn the interest rate near is zero is for print money. Unlike cutting spending, debt reduction, and wealth distribution, printing money is inflationary stimulus. In every belief, central bank prints new money out of thin air. and users buy financial assets and government buying. In having to help the United States during the Great Depression and again 2008 when the United States Central Bank, the Federal Reserve, printed over $2 trillion. Other central banks around the world printed all the right money too. By buying financial assets, this money helps the greatest asset classes makes people more creditworthy. However, this only helps the wrong financial asset. This is the central bank print money, but economy buy financial asset. The central bank government, on the other hand, combine services and put money in the hands of people, but cannot print money. So when order is stimulate the economy, the must cooperate. By buying government buying, the central bank essentially lends money to government, allows the run a deficit and increases spending on goods and services through stimulus programs and employment benefits. This increases the people's income as well as the government's stand. However, eroding the economy towards debt burdens. This is a very risky time. Policy makes him to balance the four ways the burdens come down. The difference rationally but the balance for the inflationary in the world maintains stability. It's balanced correctly, there can be a beautiful deleveraging. It says deleveraging can be ugly or can be beautiful. How can a deleverage be beautiful? Even though deleveraging is a difficult situation, handling of difficult situation is the best possible beautiful. A lot more than beautiful than feel unbalanced excess deleveraging. In a beautiful deleveraging, that's the crime the relative income, real economy versus the process, and inflation and insufficient problem. It's having the right balance. The right balance should require certainty of cutting spending, reduce debt, transferring printing money, so the economic social stability can be maintained. People let's keep printing money raises play. It wants to pay people offset credit. Remember spending is right now. A dollar spending paying for its money has the same prices as dollar spending pay for credit. By printing money, the central bank can make a print disappear credit with increases similar money. In order to round, the central bank needs to not of the income grow, but get the rate of the income grow higher, the rate of interest on accumulated debt. So what do we mean? Basically, income needs to grow past debt growth. For example, let's assume a company going through deleveraging its debt income comes to 100%. That means stimulated debt head is the same amount income entitled the country makes in a year. Now think about the interest on net debt. What's it 2%? If that is growing to 2% because of that is interest, that income the only grow the other one 1%, you will never do that burden. You need to print enough money to get the rate of income grade above the rate interest. However, printing money you can easily build because it's easy to do. People do alternative. The case printing too much money and closing on except in high inflation and Germany is delivered in 1920. If policy makers is to balance, your delivery is automatic. Growth the slow but the brothers go down. That's if it's beautiful deleveraging. When incomes begin to rise, borrowing begin to appear more creditworthy, and more borrowings appear creditworthy. Lenders begin to lend money again. Debt burdens the finance begins poor. Better about money becomes consumer. Eventually, the economy is again, leading to reflationary or the long-term debt cycle. The leverage plus horrible if handled badly. If handled well, is eventually first problem. It takes roughly decade more for debt burdens for an economy activity to get back to normal and to turn more last decade. In closing, of course, a little bit more complicated template suggests. However, laying the short-term debt cycle, how long-term debt cycle, and then both productivity grow, right? Gives a reasonably good template, similarly bound, where we are now, probably healthy. So in summary, there are three words that like to take away. First, don't have the debt rises past the income, because your debt burdens will eventually crush you. Second, don't have the income rise past the productivity, because it will eventually become unpayable. And third, to own checking ratio productivity, because the long run that's work matters most. This is simple as by advice for you and a simple policy maker. You might surprise the bonus to people, including my most policy maker, don't pay enough attention. This template works for me, and I hope to for you. Thank you.